Our next speakers represent two of the largest and most heavily funded online marketplaces for travel's third largest and fastest growing sector: tours, activities, attractions, events, and experiences. Please welcome the co-founder and COO of Klook, Gnock Fah, and the CEO and co-founder of GetYourGuide, Johannes Reck. Gentlemen, welcome. So it's kind of nice to have some folks who don't do just hotels and flights up on stage. So welcome. I think experiences have arrived, would you say? It's kind of nice after we're now like into the third decade of online travel. It's pretty amazing. So if I think about, so the first flight was booked online in the early 1990s. If we're now well into the third decade, why has it taken so long for this industry to start to pay attention to tours, activities, and attractions? Eric?
Yeah, well, I think for us, definitely, well, first of all, Klook originates from Asia. So I think that probably will be a bit more relevant to the fact that mobile is a game changer for us in Asia, but also I believe that it's been a true game changer for activities, right? Because most of the bookings has predominantly been happening offline after you arrive at the destination. So when mobile was not as prevalent, there was just no such means to do with discovery and booking. So I think that definitely was the biggest contributor. Today, 80% of our bookings happen on mobile. So for us, that's definitely one of the mobile driver.
For you, it's the mobile piece. Johannes?
Well, first of all, it's great to be at center stage finally. I've counted, it's my 10th Phocuswright, so it took us 10 years to...
So, and you guys were founded in 2009?
2009, we launched in 2010.
Okay.
And to me, like, we've basically seen three major disruptions which GetYourGuide has spearheaded. The first one was in 2010, we were actually the first marketplace. So there were no marketplace companies out there who had an extranet for supply to easily onboard and offer their products to customers around the world.
But, so I mean, I think Viator was not a marketplace. I mean, they certainly had an extranet. I mean, that's how suppliers manage their...
In 2010, they did not. They worked off of spreadsheets, and they were just very exclusive with very few suppliers, and we opened the landscape. Then 2014-15, we saw the shift towards mobile, which has accelerated it. And now most recently, what we're seeing is this entire advent of exclusive content, so originals, what you saw that we launched recently. And for us, over the last 10 years, we've been really on the mission to give the whole world access to incredible experiences. And we just see that there's this massive shift now away from the commodity experiences like flights and hotels and airfare, and that's really yesterday's game. And now the future is all about what people actually do when they travel.
Okay. So I want to give a little context for both. So Klook, founded in 2014, based in Hong Kong. You're up to 1,500 employees,
yes,
give or take. You've raised almost 600 million or a little bit less, somewhere around there?
500 plus.
Okay. And so you've made some statements in the past about annual run rate of more than $1 billion in gross bookings, or also 60 million tickets you're expecting to sell this year, or 60 million bookings. Is that in terms of scale?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And GetYourGuide, so founded in 2009, launched in 2010, based in Berlin. My impression is more focused on Europe in terms of your core market. And you've got, 600, 700 employees, and about 30 million tickets sold to date?
More than 40 now. So 40 million customers. And for us, Europe has been our home base, and we've been growing massively in Europe, and we have very good inventory there. But most recently, we've also grown really well in the US, where we're going to be the market leader over the next 12 months.
And you've also raised more than 600 million. So
650 million, yeah.
650 million.
It's a great business.
So we have a slide. I have some stats. I just want to put up this one slide. Yeah, so here's some key stats about the market. So roughly 180 billion in global, you can see it down here on the screen. So 180 billion in global market size, 1.9 billion raised since 2017. Not just you guys, actually about 50 companies so far that have raised that just in the last 3 years. 120 OTAs in this market, so we have two of the bigger ones here, but there's actually quite a bit. Hundreds of reservation system companies. So I also was looking at all of the exits within this space. So we think about the acquisitions of Viator, Fair Harbor, Boken. There was an IPO in Japan with Veltra. And so I tally up the value of all of those exits, and the total is less than $1 billion. So it seems like so far within this sector, more money has gone in than has come out. So I kind of feel like this sector still has something to prove. I mean, what's your take? Do you guys still have something to prove? I mean, when is the big $1 billion exit going to be for our sector?
Well, I think really right now it's just too early in the stage of development of our industry, right? We're still talking about globally teens that are online. And if you look at Asia, the number is actually even lower, right? So I think that's the reason why you're seeing that the smaller guys actually are not surviving as easily as the larger players in this industry is starting to establish what we are all very familiar with in the travel industry, the global network effect. And I think once that is in place, the bigger guys do become bigger, and the smaller guys will have a harder time to grow. So I think we're entering that phase right now.
Well, to be frank, my opinion is, if you look at what's being transacted on marketplaces today, it's roughly 3 to 4% of those $180 billion that you just had on the screen here, and that compares to 40 to 50% in the accommodation industry. So the runway is still so long for all of us, and we're still so much in the early innings. So I think your theme is, are we there yet? I can just say for the experiences industry, we haven't even really started. Right, so I think the entire notion of what are the big exits comes completely prematurely. I would be much more focused on the customer experience and how we can innovate for customers than sort of some financial figures.
But if I'm an investor, and you guys have lots of investors, and you have to answer to them, they don't just want to, well, this is a big, long runway answer. I mean, they want to, at some point, right, have that exit. So what do you tell your investors? When is that exit going to happen?
Well, I don't think we currently have this problem because we've only been existed for about 4 years in the making, right? And this year we're talking about 60 million.
So Johannes has a bigger problem?
Well, I would say it depends on investor, right? Some investors have a longer horizon. So for ours, in fact, they are also longer horizon. So I think they are indeed still patient.
Okay.
So I can only speak for our investors. So we've raised our first venture round in 2013, so it's not that long in the game either. And our investors are obsessed about the customer. They really want to know how we can improve the overall experience. They're not so obsessed about an immediate exit.
Are you guys still startups?
We continue want to be, but I would say because of the sheer size of a company at 1,500 with 20 offices globally, we have to put in place frameworks where we're learning about larger corporates, but at the same time, we're trying to maintain agility within the company as well, which I think is part of a startup mode.
I mean, 10 years in, can you call yourself a startup still?
So we see ourselves as a growth company, and we clearly are that because we're growing at a torrid pace. And we see ourselves as market leaders with lots of experience that we can bring to bear, but at the same time, we still have a very agile mindset, and we continuously try to disrupt the space.
So SoftBank is an investor, and a fairly significant investor in both of your companies. So I've got to ask, how does that work, and when is the merger going to happen?
You mean how does what work?
How do you have? So you have a major investor that is a significant investor in two directly competitive companies. I mean, you guys are.
Well, I think that can really speak of that, we are the two of the best companies in the travel space now emerging, right? So I think they are basically looking at, is this industry has a long-term play, right? Is it going to be profitable? Is it going to be, able to own the entire global market? And in fact, in travel space, often you look at the major players, they own the global market, right? And then it's relatively smaller regional players. So I think that really, I believe, is a vote of confidence that we can both really grow the market.
But isn't there a conflict of interest? I mean, how does SoftBank manage that? I mean, if they're investing in two competing companies, I mean, how do they balance their interests? And
I would say, look at Booking, right? Booking with Agoda, Priceline, Booking.com. Under one umbrella, you have different brands. I would see it in similar ways, right? I mean, if you look at ride-hailing, for example, we have Uber, Grab, Didi, and different ones. For them, from what I learned from them, it's about the industry. Is the industry the viable industry to go in?
You're being quiet, Johannes.
Well, I think SoftBank honestly gets way too much press attention. I mean, they are one of our investors, and they are, not a very significant investor either, and I think the same is true for Klook. And honestly, we have like 4 board meetings a year, and we are a very founder-led company. We're a very entrepreneurial company. We do what we do, and SoftBank is along for the ride, and they share the same vision. They're very supportive, but it's not like I wake up and call the SoftBank partner on what to do in the morning. So I think it's they get way too much credit, I think, for what we are doing.
So has anything changed, especially with all of the attention to SoftBank since the WeWork debacle over the past several months? Has that changed?
No, not at all.
You don't get a phone call, hey, we're changing how we do things with you guys?
Not at all. Masa and his team have a very long-term vision, and I think that's shared by the two of us. And look, SoftBank, yes, they made a mistake with WeWork. I think that's obvious. But on the flip side, I mean, there are lots of great portfolio companies in there as well. And so I think the travel experiences industry broadly is such a massive industry, and there's still so much to gain that they'd be foolish to pull on the brakes, and they clearly are not.
So the competitive landscape in this space is so interesting. It reminds me a lot of, I remember in the early days of online travel in the early 90s, late 90s and early 2000s, there were 20 significant OTAs in the United States alone. Right now, there's 2, right, effectively. So this obviously can't kind of play out. When you think about the competitive landscape and 120 OTAs, what is this? There has to be some consolidation. Yeah.
Well, we look at competition really from a partnership perspective, right? For example, if you look at China as one market, 140 million trips annually outbound. Can we bring those 140 million travelers online, able to book activities overnight? No. It just takes time, right? So instead, we would choose to partnership as well in such markets, right? So we work with the largest OTA in China, to the largest e-commerce companies, to the largest digital wallet companies. They're all right now in this space. So we can see them as a competitor in some angle, but at the same time, we can see them as a partner. And I think we've chose the partnership path.
Yeah. So let's say in the case of TripAdvisor, for example, they seem to have a pretty significant lead in supply. So how do you catch up, or do you need to catch up? How do you think about kind of the supply dynamic versus quantity versus quality?
So, just to give you a concrete example, I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions that we have in the travel experiences industry globally, that the quantity of supply determines your success. If you come, let's say to Miami, you don't care whether you have 50 tours to the Everglades on the platform. You care about whether you have the best tour and whether it has the right options for you. So the discovery process is really different compared to hotels, and people always confuse the two. So in that sense, TripAdvisor has by no means a lead on supply, otherwise they'd be growing much faster, right? But instead, the way how you have to look at it, I'll give you a concrete example. The Harry Potter tour in London. We had the Harry Potter tour. It was a very small tour run by 2 young tour guides, but it wasn't optimized at all. It didn't have the right meeting point, it wasn't properly merchandised, etc. So we reconstructed it under the umbrella of GetYourGuide Originals. And within a short period of time, that tour with the improvement and the storytelling that we did became the #1 thing to do for us in London. So it's much more about the curation of inventory and the merchandising of inventory than just having a lot of Harry Potter tours.
So can I have a slide actually about GetYourGuide Originals. Could we put that up on the screen? So this is a really interesting dynamic. So GetYourGuide Originals, so you are basically going into markets and you are working with local operators and creating or designing kind of a tour in partnership. So there's some examples here, and in particular, I want to highlight the 2 on the bottom. So there's the Priority Access Coliseum, and then the one below that's got the yellow, I guess, GetYourGuide Certified. So it's basically the same attractions. It's got the same aggregate review score. The one in yellow has got many more reviews, and it's actually, I think, ranked 30 versus the GetYourGuide Original, which is at the top. Seems like a very similar tour, the same price. So it looks like you're really competing with a lot of your operators in your marketplace. If you're stepping in and creating your own product, you're now directly competing with the operators that are already there. How do you think about that?
So first of all, I mean, just to make sure that you properly understand. So this is not the same tour. This actually dramatically evolved from the same tour. You have different tour guides. They're curated tour guides at different starting times. There's a different meeting point, which is fully designed by us. There are different add-ons. The tour length and everything is different. We have the love where you're going guarantee that if you didn't like it, you get your money back. So this is a very much of an evolved tour. But just to address the elephant in the room, spot on. Our suppliers upset about this. Not at all. Actually, in this case, City Wonders and Simona, the lead, actually co-evolved this tour with us. And within a very short period of time, we could give him 20% incremental bookings to what he already had on the platform. Just mentioned the Harry Potter example. We grew their business by 20x in a short period of time. We pioneered the Bali Instagram experience. No one had figured out that millennials wanted to do Instagram tours on Bali, so we co-designed that with a local guide called Neoman, and we really blew his business through the moon by making really prominent on the platform.
But why do this as opposed to actually stepping into supply and acquiring tour operators? Or is that something that maybe in the future?
No, we believe in a partnership model. So we believe that what we bring is the consumer audience, what we bring is the data, and what we bring is the knowledge of what makes a great tour. And similar to Netflix, right? Those guys also don't go in and sort of suddenly hire actors, but instead they work very closely with producers to produce the content that consumers want. And I very much see GetYourGuide, frankly, as the 21st century entertainment company in real life and travel, right? We need to produce content that people really will want to do when they travel, and I think that's the game changer for the next 10 years in the travel industry.
Douglas, we have a question.
Gentlemen. So, of course, we know tours, activities, and experiences is exploding as a category online, but is that industry exploding? Or another way to ask it, is all of your business share shift from a more legacy way to book it? Or is there incremental growth and people actually doing this stuff more?
Yeah, thank you, Philip. So that's a really good question. And the answer is the market is growing per se, so people just do more experiences. Instagram has fueled that. Everyone wants to take pictures now when they travel. They want to do great things. They want to have exclusive experiences. And then secondly, the market is just shifting from offline to online, right? People were queuing up, all of the over-tourism that you see at the main sites. That's the result of people not booking online. So what we can see, it's both. It's a trend that's being fueled by millennials and mobile, and on the flip side, it's also an industry shift from offline to online.
I think if I were to add from an Asia perspective, right? I think most of you who are familiar with, let's say, the China outbound market, they do a lot of shopping, used to, actually, when they go abroad and overseas, right? That shopping spending has significantly come down over the last 5 years. However, overseas spending has not taken the same type of downtrend. Where is the money going to if it didn't go to shopping, right? Hotels and flights will always been there. It's actually indeed going to experiences. So working with partners and also with let's say, the leading search platform in China and also in Asia, we actually do see an uptrend in search for experiences. And that, I think, is truly a testament to the fact that the industry itself is growing versus just a share shift.
So I also want to bring up something about the Klook products. We have a slide for Klook. If you could put this slide up. So one of the things I think is super interesting about Klook from the beginning is you guys have introduced kind of products within your platform that I think from a Western perspective, I would never think to do this. And you look at some of these products, $4 or $5 like Wi-Fi, SIM cards, some really low price kind of ticket products that you're selling, a lot of them. So I mean, the question is, yes, if you're doing 60 million bookings a year, but most of them are a couple of bucks. I mean, are you really making money? And can you convert that $1 Wi-Fi customer to a $70 or $80 scuba diving experience?
Well, I think most importantly, what we are aimed to do, actually the word tours and activities for us were new. What we were aimed to do is to address every single pain point from the moment the consumer land in the destination. The first pain point that I'm sure most of you would feel when you go to APAC is the fact that you just don't have connectivity. Most of your roaming doesn't work in Asia, and that's the first pain point we wanted to address. And then it becomes, airport transfer. Airport transfer is actually a meaningful vertical category business for Klook, and then it comes down to tours, experiences, and we've recently also added restaurants. So we're basically trying to address every single pain point within the traveler's journey in the destination.
Okay. And then one other question that's come up, especially in Asia, though, is pricing in particular. And frankly, Klook has been accused of really being extremely aggressive on pricing. I mean, discounting, often kind of selling products even below cost in order to acquire share. And we've seen this story play out in hotels in China, in India, across Southeast Asia. So how long is that going to continue?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think whether it's below cost, I think that's debatable, because I would say that for us, we've always aimed from day one being a profitable growth. So we don't really go under cost, I would say, in general. I would then give that credit to our sales team for being able to get really low-price products from the merchants, and hence pass back some of those savings to the consumer. And in fact, if you look at APAC, I would say that prices generally get inflated. So for those of you who've been to, let's say, Bangkok, right, you would always go to the street and bargain. So the market rate is always not the true rate that you're going to pay. It's just online gives the transparency nowadays. And most importantly, I think on top of that, we're trying to bring value. One of the value that customers want is just value for money products, meaning, let's say, better pricing or more transparent pricing. But we'll also try to bring some additional benefits, whether it's skip the line with a Klook tickets or as an additional privilege that you get. So value is something that we go after.
Okay. So I like to end my interviews on stage with a fun game. So a game I'd like to play with you both is called Either Or. And I've never done this with two people before. So I'm going to just kind of look at each of you, and you'll kind of get a sense. But so, for example, Eric, if I say chocolate or vanilla, you would say?
Chocolate.
Okay. Easy, right? And it's just a fun game, so no one would take anything you say as indicative of your company's strategy or direction
right.
or anything like that. Okay, so you ready? I'm going to start with you, Johannes. Bus tour or bike tour?
Bike tour.
Food tour or cooking class?
Cooking class.
Museum or aquarium?
Museum.
Wi-Fi or walking tours?
Wi-Fi.
Oh.
No surprise.
Get Your Guide branded tours or operator branded tours?
Get Your Guide branded tours.
Discounts or deep discounts?
Discounts.
Professional guide or experience with a local?
The same thing, but I would say professional guide.
Quantity or quality?
Quality.
Startup or established?
Startup.
B2C or B2B?
B2C.
Google or Facebook?
WhatsApp.
Amazon or Alibaba?
Alibaba.
Netflix or Disney Plus?
Netflix.
Uber or Grab?
Uber.
SoftBank or Temasek?
All great.
SoftBank or Sequoia?
All great. That's a tough one.
America or Asia?
For Get Your Guide America.
America or Europe?
Europe.
TripAdvisor or Expedia?
Get Your Guide.
That wasn't one of the options, but I will let it slide. Booking or Ctrip/Trip?
C-Trip.
Homes or hotels?
Homes.
Airbnb or Oyo?
Oyo.
Google Travel or OTAs?
Google Travel.
Reserve with Google or Airbnb experiences?
Reserve with Google.
Berlin or Zurich?
I love Berlin and I love Zurich. I can't answer that.
Hong Kong or New York?
Hong Kong. Hong Kong needs a love now.
IPO or merger?
IPO.
Merger or IPO?
IPO.
2020 or 2021?
Long-term perspective.
Hang Seng or NASDAQ?
Where the higher return is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Johannes and Eric, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.